Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. In today's talk, I was going to discuss the solar eclipse or surya grahan that's happening 17th of February 2026. This talk is from a Vedic astrology or Jyotish perspective, so ancient Indian astrology that's more than 5,000 years old. It seems like the theme for the solar eclipse is reparenting, which I'll get into. Also, I was going to go into the birth chart of Lindsey Vonn, who is an Olympic skier and has been part of the current Winter Olympics in Milan, Italy. So, yeah, let's go ahead and take a look. A note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only. It should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support, and you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. So some announcements and orientation, especially for those who are new to the channel. So auto dubbing is available on this channel in various languages listed here. The newest ones are Dutch, Polish, and Korean. Also, because we are in eclipse season right now, we have the solar eclipse on the 17th of February, and then we'll have the corresponding lunar eclipse on the 3rd of March. It's always about expect the unexpected, and that's part of what we'll be discussing today. But notice that I said, it's not about expecting the worst, okay? So some people, when they think about eclipses, they always think the worst, but it can go either way, actually. It's just, something out of the blue, something surprising typically happens. I do have a bunch of videos related to eclipses so you can learn more about them. Symbolism of Rahu, Ketu, symbolism of sun, symbolism of moon, because you get eclipses when these four elements line up. Excuse me. Also, I do specifically have a lunar solar eclipses or grahan video, auspicious timing or muhurta of eclipses, and then mantra for Rahu, Ketu eclipses, and mantras for the sun, in case you want to start a mantra practice to work with the energies of eclipses. Also, all of my teaching videos on the subject of Vedic astrology are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. Also, my channel is all about playlists. So this type of video, eclipse video, will be in my all my eclipse videos are my Go Chart Planetary Transits playlist. But since I'm going to be talking about Lindsey Vonn, also, this will also be part of the Birth Charts Famous People playlist that I have. But I do have others as well. I really try to be good about slotting my videos into different playlists so that they're easy to find. Some of the newest videos I've posted, in case you missed any: birth charts for Jeff Bezos and Amazon, Rohini Nakshatra are the favorite star, full moon or Purnima on 1st of February 2026, planetary transits or Gochar for February 2026, and birth chart synastry compatibility for Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce. If you're new to all this and want to start learning Vedic astrology, I've listed some videos at the bottom of the slide that I would start with to get a really solid foundation, to get learning, get on a good track to learning, and also to get more into talks like this. Okay, so here is a clean version of the solar eclipse chart for 17th of February 2026, so none of my notes or markings. The specific time for this chart is 7:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time or New York time. That's the time zone I live in. All right, so just so, especially if you're a student, you can take a look at the chart and, maybe take a crack at it yourself and then compare your notes to mine. But this is the chart we're going to be working with. So, also in terms of this talk, basically I'm going to go through the eclipse path so that we know where the eclipse is going to be a bit more influential. Go through the eclipse chart as well as amshas and sub-zodiacs so we get into more of the timing and details. Then I'm going to be talking about general patterns of eclipses in sports generally. Then I'm going to be going into the birth chart of Lindsey Vonn, including the current sky pattern and a few of her sub-zodiacs for her chart. And then I'm going to be giving you a list of the sports-related birth charts that I've analyzed on this channel, in case you want to get more into the astrology of sports. So, okay, so let's take a look at the eclipse path first for 17th February 2026. This map is from time and date. So if you look in the bottom right corner, it says 1 and then February 17, 2026. That little kind of, it almost looks like a Nike symbol. That is where the totality of the eclipse is most visible. Okay, and so the solar eclipse, and so wherever the eclipse is more visible, you'll get more influences from the eclipse. So let's see. So what are we talking about here? So Antarctica, also the southern part of Africa, southern part of South America, and then again some of these oceanic islands are in that area of the sky. Okay, so let's start looking at this chart here. So we've got an Aquarius rising or Kumbha Lugna chart. Kumbha is Aquarius in Sanskrit, and Lugna is a rising sign, ascendant, first house. Those are all different names for the same thing. So you'll hear me say Lugna over and over and over again. So how do we know this? Well, this is a North Indian style chart. In that top diamond in the middle with all those planets that are circled, that's the first house or ascendant rising sign Lugna. So to get to the other houses, you count counterclockwise inclusively from the first house. So that upside down triangle in the upper left corner with Saturn in it, that's the second house. Okay, so we've got an Aquarius or Kumbha, Aquarius rising Kumbha Lugna chart here. So Aquarius is a fixed air sign. So this is all about fixed ideas, ideas that really don't change, very much or very little over long periods of time. So we're dealing with kind of fixed ideas, yeah. It's a general theme. So with all these planets in the top here, though, we've got Venus, Rahu, Mercury, Sun, Moon, and Jupiter's aspecting from the fifth house. Now, thing again, we're dealing with the solar eclipse here. So Sun is going to be eclipsed, and Moon is eclipsed because it's basically you can't see it with the Sun there. Um, Yeah, so really, in Rahu, you never see because it's actually a calculation. It's not a planet of physical mass. So the only planets you can see are Venus and Mercury here. Okay. So, and especially with eclipses, like I mentioned, there's usually this, expect the unexpected energy. So there's some big shift going on here, especially because we have so many planets in this first house. Now, the first house represents the self, both the physical self as well as the personality. It also represents general health. Okay. So, yeah, there's some big shift that's going to be affecting this area. The other thing about the Lugna is that it basically sets a tone for the whole chart. So there's some major shift in terms of long-held ideas or beliefs related to the self. Okay, that's going to see a big unexpected shift here. So, well, we do have that big gaggle of planets there. So Venus, Rahu, Mercury, Sun, Moon. So besides the eclipse going on, we have 5 planets there. And Venus owns 2 houses, Mercury owns 2 houses, Sun and Moon own a house each. Rahu doesn't own any houses. So basically, 6 houses. We have the lords of 6 houses at the top here. That means you're going to be drawing energy from those 6 houses, which is half the chart, into this, Lugna here. So again, there's even more intensity. Okay, so eclipse is going to bring, big unexpected shift, but there's going to be like an intensity of energy here. So even if Aquarius isn't your first house sign or constellation, whatever your Aquarius house is in your chart is going to see a whole lot of energy and unexpected shifts going on. Okay. So the other thing, so that's a big deal. Actually, when we have a bunch of planets like that, 3 or 4 planets in one house, depending on which house it is, we call that a pravraja yoga. Okay, so yoga is a combination, and a pravraja yoga gives a life focus because again, all your energy is being sent in basically into one house. Okay. The other thing, so as if that's not enough, this is also what we call a Sudarshan Lugna. So a Sudarshan Lugna means that the rising sign, which here is Aquarius, and the sun sign, which is Aquarius, because sun is in Aquarius, and the moon sign, which is Aquarius, are all the same. So what happens is the rising sign is more so indicates like the physical body of somebody. The moon represents the mind, the emotional mind, that sort of thing. And the sun represents the soul or the spirit. So when you get this alignment of rising sign, sun, and moon, you get an alignment of body, mind, and soul. Okay. So even more intensity, more focus here going into, again, Aquarius house matters, whatever, again, your Aquarius house is. In this case, again, in this case, the whole chart. So there's some major shakeup going on in terms of, ideas of self going on in this chart. Okay. The other thing about this pravraja yoga we've got going on is I would say that it's Rahu dominated. Okay. Sun is not strong because it's eclipsed. Moon is a new moon and also in this eclipse. Venus and Mercury are not too bad. They're actually a little bit strong because they're both in a friend sign. And Rahu is, doing Rahu's thing. The thing, though, is that Venus, Rahu, and Mercury are all in a star of Rahu. So the planets, so I would say that there's more of a Rahu influence, which again brings this kind of ambitious energy. It's the north node of the moon. It brings this ambitious energy, as well as this unexpected, idiosyncratic, unexpected change type of energy. Okay. So more about the lugna here. So we do have an eclipsed sun and moon is there. The sun is bhavam, meaning that the sun is the lord of the seventh house, and the seventh house lord has gone 7 houses away. The seventh house relates to partnerships of all kind, personal and professional, but also life path, okay, forward in life. So this change that's going on is going to be affecting relationships, which we would already guess, or not even guess, no, because Venus, Mercury, Sun, and Moon, even they're all sitting in the first house, those 4 planets are aspecting. You can see the lines here, 4 lines going from the first house to that 7th house. They're all aspecting their energy on the 7th house of partnerships. But then even more so, okay, so it's almost like not just a relationship or 2 or 3, but it's almost like a domino effect that's going on here when you have the 7th house lord and it's gone 7 houses away back to the self there. Okay. The sun, moon, and actually the ascendant as well are all in a nakshatra called Dhanistha. Excuse me. If you're not familiar with nakshatras are also called lunar mansions. There are about 27 of them. They all have a different energy and deity associated with them. And so Dhanistha is symbolized by a drum. Okay. So Dhanistha is all about rhythms. Like sometimes, especially when you get like the creative planets like Venus or Moon and Dhanistha, that can signal like music, somebody who's into music of some kind, in some way. But Dhanistha can also, if you get like more of the, fiery type of planets like Sun, like which we do here, or Mars, and Mars is actually also in Dhanistha, but it's in a different house. You can even get like military, almost like if you want to think about the rhythm and lineup of a military parade. Either way, you get different forms of rhythm and patterns. Okay. So this is all about breaking a pattern, and again, a mental pattern because we're dealing with a fixed air sign. Okay. So, and then the thing is, because we're affecting so many planets, in the lugna, it's happening in the lugna and affecting these relationships. Again, and the energies from the planets, most of the planets in the first house are aspecting the 7th house. Again, this is creating a new rhythm for self, but also how you move through the world, especially through your relationships, I would say. Okay. So, what else do we have? Okay, so we have Venus, and we have a Swa Rahu. So Swa means a planet in its own sign or star. As I mentioned, Rahu's in its own star, being in Shatabisha. Sorry, it's like early in the morning. It takes a while for my voice to really get going here. So so those 2 planets, Venus and Rahu, are in Shatabisha. Shatabisha can literally be translated as 100 healers, or So this can be somebody who actually does healing, like a doctor or healthcare provider type of person. But this can also signal something that's difficult to heal. And again, I think this weaves into, again, we have 3 planets here, Venus, Rahu, and Mercury. Um, Rahu, again, is ambition, right? So that might be ambition that's difficult to balance. Venus is there. Venus relates to relationships, so we're getting relationships again. And Mercury relates to ideas, again, so we're getting ideas again. Also, Mercury relates to the logical, analytical mind, as well as the planning and, talk, right? So, whatever big unexpected shift is going on here, clearly affecting the whole person and relationships, has to do with ideas that are hard to shift and change related to, big efforts in relationships and thoughts, ideas, and speech. Okay. So in addition to this pravraja yoga going on here at the top, we have Jupiter aspecting from the fifth house. Okay, Jupiter's retrograde. That line under Jupiter means it's retrograde. Um, and now Jupiter's interesting because, well, Jupiter represents balance, fairness. It represents wisdom. It represents teaching, and it's in the fifth house of teaching and advising. Jupiter's a spiritual advisor, but Jupiter also represents children, and it's in the fifth house. So when we have Jupiter in the fifth house, that sounds like it might be a good idea, but actually it creates what we call a karako nashaya. So what this means is that there's problems here related to children. Okay, like if this was a person's chart. So that's interesting. I mean, I find that very interesting that it's like, again, like all these planets in the first, we have Jupiter aspecting here. We have two planets on either side, which actually causes some difficulty. Saturn and Mars on either side of the pravraja yoga. We have this karaka nashaya Jupiter aspecting the lugna. And the lord of that fifth house is Mercury, which is in Shatavisha. Okay. So there's and in the fifth house, the constellation, there's Gemini, which is a dual air sign. So it's like mixed ideas. It's almost like the opposite. It's still ideas because it's still an air sign, but Aquarius is fixed ideas, and Mercury is dual ideas, like contrasting ideas. Sometimes it can be confusion, if somebody's not well integrated or whatever. But again, the lord of the fifth house is in Shatapisha, something that's difficult to heal. And Jupiter's in a nakshatra called Punarvasu, which is about, the symbol of that is a quiver of arrows. So that, when archers, they have that box on their back, and then they have the arrows, they pull them out and they string them on their bow, shoot them out, and then they go retrieve the arrow and, sometimes put it back in um, the quiver, right? So there's a cycling energy going on here. The other thing is that, we're talking about an arrow, so it's a type of weapon, something very sharp. So it looks like, again, if this is a person, this is like cycling back and forth, some difficult cycling back and forth and not really getting anywhere with some problem related to children. Okay. That's affecting the native of the chart here. And it might be like arguments with kids, like, if your kids are, even if they're little, they can argue with you, right? But, if they're older, like maybe teenagers or even young adults or something like that. So, So yeah, so now you can kind of see where this might be heading here, right? In terms of the idea of reparenting. So anyway, again, if we start putting this all together, there's an ambition to again create some sort of internal leadership, right? Because Sun and Moon and Rahu are not seen, but they're there. So if you can't, so these are, if a planet's combust or eclipsed or Rahu, Ketu, you never see those guys because they're calculations, they're more abstractions. But what that means is that the big internal shift here is something that you can't see. It's deep and internal, but it's affecting what's coming out of, it's pravraja, which is Venus, relationships, support, social grace, and Mercury, again, ideas, thoughts, actions, plans, decisions, speech, and all the lords of those houses. So again, Venus is the lord of, let's see, the fourth house of home. It's also the lord of the ninth house of father. Mercury is the lord of the fifth house of children. It's also the lord of the eighth house of deep psychology. So, yeah, okay. So again, weaving this all together, so ambition to generate a new internal leadership, because Sun represents leadership. Sun can represent king. It can literally represent father. And Moon is there, which represents mother. Rahu is there, which represents maternal grandparents. So I've always said, like, eclipses are all about generational change, because to get eclipses, you have to get a lineup between sun, father, moon, mother, Rahu, maternal grandparents, and Ketu, paternal grandparents. And that's what you have on the 1-7 axis here of self, the first house of self, and the seventh house of relationships and partnerships and path forward. So there's an ambition here to create some sort of new internal leadership to change plans and pursue desire. The reason why desire is there, Venus represents desire, and Venus has been combust since the end of November 2025. So December, January, almost 3 months. So, and Venus is a planet that represents desire, but also social grace, compassion, diplomacy, finer things of life. So when Venus goes combust, it's people tend to be a bit grumpier. I always kind of joke that when Venus is combust, it's not really a great time to get good customer service. Even the customer service people who are supposed to be pretty good about handling problems all day long that people send their way, they may not always go as well as smoothly as it could. But again, Venus also represents relationships. So Venus has been, again, sort of hidden. Maybe you haven't even actually seen a lot of people. You've been kind of isolated. But also, while Venus has been combust, and again, a combust planet is when it's so close to the sun, you can't see it in the sky with your eyes anymore if you look up in the sky. So Venus just now, on 16th of February, came back out of combustion. But during the last 3 months, since the end of November, it was probably a really important time to consider, again, there's this deep internal change going on. Really consider, what do you want? And also consider relationships here. The other thing is Venus just came back online. Mercury also just came back. Mercury's combust until about, I think, a week, 10 days ago. And Mars has been combust for a very long time. Mars is going to stay combust until, I believe, the end of March. So Venus, Mercury, and Mars, those 3 planets have been combust for, I think, simultaneously since December. So there's been a lot of deep internal contemplation, and a lot of these planets have been in war with each other. So going back and forth in terms of, what do you want? What do you think? What decisions are you making? How are you talking to yourself? How are you talking to others? It's been a lot of internal, churn, basically, to look at these things and figure them out. But now, one by one, Mercury just came back out of combustion, Venus the day before this, and then Mars soon. So Venus will bring more external support, both giving and receiving. And Mercury is going to, again, bring some of these decisions and ideas and plans out into the open. And again, once Mars comes around out of combustion, Mars is all about actions. So this might be, sort of sharing, talking about, since Jupiter and Mercury are there, those are the 2 communication, starting to talk to people, others in relationships, about what you actually want. And then, figuring out if you're on the same page or not. And then the actions will follow. Okay. This also could be, again, advice as well, because Venus is the mundane practical advisor, Jupiter's the spiritual advisor, and then the Lord of the 5th house advising, Mercury is involved in this as well. So there's a lot of advice going on here, internal advice. And it's all about giving, really, almost all your energy to this deep internal change of mostly ideas of self and the way you want to operate and what you desire. And that kind of changes the whole gestalt of how you move forward in life and how you show up in relationships. Okay, now remember too, even though it's easy to focus on the 1st house because there's this huge cluster of planets there, again, most of these planets, Venus, Mercury, Sun, and Moon, are aspecting their energies into the 7th house, and Mars is actually aspecting there as well. So almost as much energy is focused on the 7th house of, again, spouse-like partner, so personal relationships, business partnerships, independent business, as well as, path forward in life. Okay, so keep that in mind, and let's see what else we got here. So I wanted to go back. Sorry, I kind of went forward a couple of slides and realized I had missed something or had misspoken. So I said that Venus, Rahu, and Mercury were all in Shatabisha. It's just Venus and Rahu are in Shatabisha. Mercury's in a nakshatra called Purva, so let me talk about that a little bit. So again, Mercury represents ideas, thoughts, plans, speech, and Purva is the front legs of a funeral pyre. So this is like, again, things turning to ash. I mean, flames, combustion, also again, like a symbolic, a literal death, that sort of thing. So again, this is another indication that ideas are transforming, especially related to fifth house matters. So children, and again, part of the idea, this idea that this moment's all about reparenting, but also the eighth house, which is deep psychology. So a lot of deep, again, idea transformation here. Yeah, so I just want to make sure that I was clear about that. Okay, so, that's a first pass at the chart. What else do we have going on here? Well, I mentioned briefly we've got two planets on either side of the Lagna. We've got Saturn in the second house and Mars in the 12th house. So those are two malefic planets, natural malefic planets, and that creates what we call a papakartra yoga, or a kind of a bad necklace, um, or a bad scissors, actually, combination. What that does is that creates obstacles. Okay, and especially Saturn and Mars are two very physical planets, like they literally represent land and property. So this will be physical, potentially some formidable physical obstacles, that somebody will have to that might have maintained this, stuck fixed ideas of self and relation and how you show up in relationships. But there'll be some physical, there can be physical obstacles that show up as well. Another yoga combination that's in this chart is a Saraswati yoga. That's the relative placements of Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter. Saraswati yoga indicates education, but also a lot of creativity. So, that's actually a pretty nice combination there. Venus combustion, I already mentioned. So that was combust November 26th through 16th of February. Again, usually when Venus is combust, not really a great time to see the fruits, literal fruits of one's labor or love or support or kindness and stuff like that. Like I've mentioned, different important periods when Venus was combust, like was it last year or the year before? I don't know if it was 2024 or 2025, but around May of one of those years, we had Venus combust and Jupiter combust as well. At least in the United States, we had a bunch of college students who were protesting politics in the Middle East, and they were like barricading themselves in universities and vandalizing property, and some of them got expelled and all this kind of stuff. But it was pretty much a mess. I mean, and Jupiter represents education, in universities and stuff like that. So it's like it wasn't a time of diplomacy. It was like, forcing, or trying to force other people's hands in terms of what they were doing. So there wasn't a lot of diplomacy or compassion, especially while those two were both combust. But another time Venus was combust was, I think it was a summer before, 2 summers before that. We had the Black Lives Matter movement that happened in the United States, which, in and of itself is an idea and philosophy is, I think, noble, but the way it was handled, and the way it presented itself in cities across the United States is that, people were like burning cars and looting small businesses and that sort of thing. And, it was their way of drawing attention to the situation or the, issues. But, it kind of got out of hand where, a lot of collateral damage happened to, innocent people and stuff like that. So, yeah, Venus is, Venus also, like, again, when somebody has a Venus combos in their chart, they usually are not the most emotive in terms of the way they speak. They may not share, they might be sensitive internally, but they really don't share that typically with people. So they might be hard to read, and even sometimes, like I've seen people with on autism spectrum, can often have like a Venus combust. And again, it's not that they don't have feelings and not that they're not sensitive or kind or whatever, but they just don't express it. They don't manifest it externally, which again is the combustion planet and what it represents. So, but again, during this Venus combustion time, when Venus was internal, was, more prominently manifesting internally, is like, what do you truly want? What do you truly desire? And that's something that potentially has been churning, inside since the end of November. Um, just a little bit more about the Shatabhisha nakshatra. So again, because we have 3 planets in that nakshatra, and again, that translates as 100 healers, the symbol of that is a circle. So that can also bring a lot of abstraction. It's more of it's a symbol. The symbol is a symbol. It's not like other nakshatra symbols like a cow or an arrow or, that sort of thing. But there's also this notion of completion, and wholeness with Shatabhisha. But it can represent things that are difficult to heal. And in this case, I would say that there's indications of something difficult to heal because Rahu is there. So Rahu, again, is going to bring this like hidden, unexpected. So this is something that's hard to kind of even sort of grasp, get your hands around or mind around in terms of what is the actual issue here. Rahu and Shatabhisha can be things that are hard to diagnose, prognose, heal, that sort of thing. But we do have indications because of this Sudarshan Lagna, the ascendant, sun, and moon all lined up here. Sun, this is mind, body, spirit medicine here. So, whenever this mental dam breaks that's been holding things up, I mean, again, there's going to be this outpouring of, shift and change, throughout the chart, throughout the life, throughout relationships. Then if we looked at the Lugnatia is the ruling planet for the chart, and that's Saturn, because Saturn rules the first house. Saturn's in a nakshatra called Purva, and it's in the second house, which is an Arthasthana. An Arthasthana is a house of, tangible material wealth, like assets, literally, but also family and inner circle. So again, we're getting more, um, relationships here, especially close relationships. Okay. Second house also relates to speech. So Saturn and Purva is symbolized by the. Oh wait, no, it's actually an Uttar. I need to change that. So Uttar is symbolized by the back legs of a funeral pyre. So the Purva is the one before it, the nakshatra before it, and that's symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. Purva, the first one, is more dramatic and tumultuous because it's like smoke and flames and things turning to ash. It can also Purva can also be symbolized by a two-faced person. So again, there's this kind of potentially wobbling back and forth, or change, shift and change, or even potentially more flexibility for someone who's an Aquarius Lugna. But so the Saturn as a planet represents doubts, delays, obstacles, structure, formality, history, that sort of thing. Especially with Saturn in the second house, this could be somebody who comes from a pretty traditional family. Okay. But there's some change about, so the Uttar is the back legs of a funeral pyre. So this is like, kind of the step after the funeral has started, or the funeral pyre has been lit, when things are turning to ash. Then it's sort of like, because at least, in Indian culture, the whole point of that is to release the soul from the body. So that also indicates this notion of like, change and transcending the old self or even reincarnation. Okay, but this reincarnation, so again, the first house lord going to the second house, this is also potentially a renewal of family and inner circle, right? So if you're a major agent of change for a family inner circle, that's going to ripple out. So, ascending the Uttar is like ascending that, death, symbolic or physical death, releasing the soul from the old, physical ways and that sort of thing. And then again, the second house also indicates it's a house of gains. So this is an asset. The ability to, transcend the old self is an asset. So whatever's going on here, even though it might be, painful or chaotic or messy or whatever, it's actually, going to bring positive, in the end, positive gains to the native as well as the family. Yeah. So, the Uttar Bhadrapada energy again, bringing order to chaos or transcending chaos. You can also think about it that way. So again, this is like a new version, the 2.0 or whatever, 3.0 or 40.0 or whatever version you're at. This new self, and this ability to transform, and transcend, old stuck beliefs is really going to be an asset. So that's important. Okay, so what else can we get out of this chart? Well, the dasha period, and this is the planetary period. So during the dasha period, that indicates planets that are, you can think of, more active or influential during a given time. So the dasha period for this moment in time of this eclipse is Mars, Venus, Mercury. And then that shifts to Mars, Venus, K2 on 18th of March, 2026. Okay, so but what these planets symbolize already, give us a lot. So Mars and Venus are two, desiring planets. Mars is kind of more libido and Venus is more love, but it's like, um, what do you really want here? Mars is also action, Venus is diplomacy and relationships, and Mercury is thoughts, decisions, plans, speech. So again, internally, how do you think and act? Sort of what's the internal axis from which you think and act in terms of, even like pursuing relationships or how you act in relationships. Okay. Now the Mercury is going to shift to K2. K2 is, it's the south node of the moon, and that's going to be more activated, especially activated on the 3rd of March when we have the corresponding lunar eclipse. But K2 is all about like, innovation, separation, releasing the past, um, rebelliousness, that sort of thing. So Mercury's more the logical mind, and K2's like the, let's let it go. Maybe even sometimes let's blow it up. Especially when you have Mars and K2 together, that can be an explosive energy. Okay, and we do actually have Mars and K2 together in several houses. The 3rd house of nonverbal communication, and also the 7th house of relationships. And path forward in life. So again, there's more indication that, all this um, internal consideration that's been going on about what you want and how you want to show up, especially in relationships. There's going to be major shifts and changes going on here. And the other thing is that Mars is exalted in the 12th house here. Mars is in Dhanistha, again, that drumbeat energy. And Dhanistha, the star of Dhanistha is Mars. So this is Mars is exalted and it's in its own star. So there's a very strong Mars, but Mars is in the 12th house of loss and expenditures. So Mars and Dhanistha can give a very like rigid type of, energy, very, just very almost like militaristic type of energy. But you can see it's in the 12th house of losses. So this is about releasing rigid actions coming probably from rigid ideas, the Aquarius Lugna here. So it's like ending that, developing more flexibility, developing more kindness, compassion, that sort of thing. So this Mars, that is the main planetary period, even when it switches, is loss of rigid actions and ideas. The other thing about, let's see, because the Lord of the 12th house is also the Saturn, which is a boon in the 2nd house. So which is an Uttar Bhadrapada. So shifting this very kind of rigid way of, thinking of the self identity, and also the actions, the kind of rigid actions that stem from that. It's all about transforming all of that. Let's see. Let's see. So Mars is, aspecting its own sign in the 3rd house here. So that's going to be a very, again, that's nonverbal communication, and K2 as well. is aspecting there. So this is going to be a big, explosive shift and change in terms of and courage too. Mars represents courage. So Mars in its own sign in the third house is going to be a lot of courage to do things in a whole new way. Okay. Let's see. Mars is also aspecting the sixth house of like acute problems where it is debilitated. So this is going to be, rethinking, like even in terms of daily activity, like, for a while during this transition of like, shifting things, in terms of day to day actions and schedules and stuff like that. Yeah, so let's see, 26th February. Oh, so what did sorry, I'm mixing up the two lines here. So, yeah, so this is going to be like waddling new habits. It's almost like like a newborn calf or something like that. The first few days it's a little bit wobbly because it's learning how to walk. Um, and so, similarly, it's like when this big internal shift happens, you might feel, or it might be that, things are pretty wobbly, in terms of daily activities and stuff like that, because you're operating from a whole new system, internal, system. And then again, there's going to be explosive energy with Mars aspecting Ketu in the seventh house, related to, again, relationships, but also path forward in life. So this is a whole new lease on life, really. Um, a little bit more about Mercury, because again, that's the sub, again, the what is it? The sub period here, dasha period. So Mercury is actually pretty strong. It's got Digbala directional strength being in the first house. It also forms a Buddha Ditya Yoga with the Sun. Buddha Ditya Yoga gives intelligence, especially like a computational math science type of intelligence. And Mercury is going retrograde, which would give it additional strength on February 26th. So when Mercury goes retrograde, it's all about rethinking, replanning, reconsidering, which we've been talking about, a lot already. The other thing is Mercury is going to be in planetary war with Venus at the end of the month, 27th, 28th. So, Mercury's head, Venus's heart. So this is going to be like a head versus heart type of matter. So, this internal constellation, it's not like everything's entirely clear. It's more clear than it was. But, once this, insight has been gained internally, and it's the person's starting to like bring this out into the internal world or external world, there's going to be some pushback, confusion. It might be like two steps forward, one step back. Um, because the way things work in the head and the way things work in the 3D mundane material world, are two different things. So, it's going to be some adjustments in terms of bringing this into reality. The other thing is on March 1st, so, not too far off, and right before the lunar eclipse on March 3rd, Venus is going to shift into Pisces. So again, which is the second house. So the second house is a house of gain. So again, this Venus that's been considered, for a while internally, we're bringing this Venusian energy of, love and kindness and compassion to second house, which is family and inner circle. But also, it's going to relationships in general are going to be boosted because Venus is exalted in Pisces. So, yeah, even though it may not be still a straight path forward, fairly soon, you're going to start to see how all of this inner work um, actually is beneficial for self and others. Okay. And then this Venus and Pisces, literally this could be like your inner circle becomes a support circle. So again, it's reciprocal. You're giving out more support, more Venusian energy, kindness, compassion, and then getting it back as well. And then also, because Sun is aspecting K2, and K2's in the sign of Sun, K2 has 5-9 aspects at this time. So K2 is not just localized to the seventh house, but it's on the third house of nonverbal communication, and then also the 11th house of income, but also clubs, groups, and society. So, again, nonverbal communication, up for change, massive change, seventh house issues, relationships path forward, up for change. And then also, friends and coworkers and clubs, group, society. Again, this ripple effect of this deep internal change is going to be seen. Um, Also of note, the Chitra grahas in this chart, so Chitra grahas are planets of vulnerability, and they can indicate sensitive spots or Achilles heel, that kind of thing. Well, Jupiter is there, and again, we already know there's issues with Jupiter because it's karako bhava nasha in the fifth house, so problems with children, it looks like. And then Saturn, so Saturn is, again, lord of the first house of self and the 12th house of laws of expenditure. It's in the second house of inner circle, and it's aspecting the fourth house of home and happiness. It's aspecting the eighth house of deep psychology, and it's also aspecting the 11th house of clubs, group, society. So again, um, this deep internal change is, one that it's it clearly hasn't been easy in terms of making this deep change. And then we have Mercury twice. So again, Mercury's the lord of the fifth house, children. So that brings more of the children energy. Um, and also it's a eighth house of deep psychology here. But the other thing is Saturn is like, structure, history, tradition. And Jupiter and Mercury in this chart literally relates to the fifth house of children, and Jupiter represents children. But Jupiter and Mercury also represent education. Okay, so and with Mercury being in the first house, Saturn being the lord of the first house, Jupiter aspect in the first house. So this isn't just about this internal change. Is not just about reparenting, changing the way that parenting the children, but this is also about parenting the self. Okay, because sometimes it's like if people come from a very traditional background, family or environments or whatever, and the people around them, or the environment has influenced them to think a certain way. And because they think a certain way, they're going to act a certain way. Um, and then that's going to filter into the way they treat themselves and children or people around them. When somebody makes a big internal change like this, and again, we also think parenting because sun and moon are at the top here. Sun and moon, mom and dad. So this, oneself as a parent, but also to others like children, but also parent to yourself. And I mean, I've spoken to a lot of people actually about this, middle age or whatever. And sometimes we have to really go deep in terms of looking at, thoughts or ideas that they've held for a long time that need to shift so that they can treat themselves in a different, usually better way. And then that trickles out to, again, all the relationships, including their children, typically. So, yeah, that's all up, for, uh, on the block here in terms of what's going on with these changes and how it's affecting, again, relationships, specifically children, very clearly children, but also relationship of with self. Yeah. Okay, so Chitra grahas we discussed Jupiter, Saturn, and Mercury twice. So again, these planets represent children, spirit, history, endurance, obstacles, thoughts, and speech, which we've been talking about. And we've got this retrograde karaka bhava nasha Jupiter and Punarvasi, difficulties with children. Also potentially cycles of um, kind of cycles or kind of a fighting spirit, I would say. Because Jupiter is, in this Punarvasu energy of like a sharp instrument, right? An arrow. Um, excuse me. So the other thing is what I've circled in this chart. A lot of it is, well, I put in this aspect lines from Saturn, or sorry, let's start with Jupiter and Saturn and Mercury, and then also the houses that they are in and they own, because especially, sorry. Because especially in this chart, you'll see that we're picking up a lot of the same energies again, in terms of what are the vulnerable areas for this person. And Chitragrahas can even literally be like places where people have had surgery, that kind of thing, which is important, I think, when we start talking about Lindsey Vonn's chart. But so Jupiter again is the second lord and oh, it is, yeah, second lord of family inner circle. and the 11th lord of clubs, groups, and society. Now, Jupiter in the 5th house is going to draw energy from the 2nd house and the 11th house. So that means that Jupiter in the 5th house is very much influenced by friends and family. So again, that gives this idea that that's probably where maybe some of these rigid ideas have come from. Okay. And also Jupiter is the lord of the 2nd house, which is an asset house, and the 11th house of income. So also like finances might be affecting the way that, the relationship with children, the way that somebody's parenting. Okay. So the other thing about this is what I was saying is like, sometimes when we ask ourselves questions, it's like, is this a true deep yes? Okay. So some people are like, yes, this is a definite yes or a definite no. But then I think sometimes we miss the next question, which is like, where is this deep yes coming from? In terms of the way we make decisions and that sort of thing. So it's like, is this a deep yes because that's what my parents want, or that's what my parents taught me, or is this a deep yes because that's what everybody else in the neighborhood is doing with their kids, and or is this, again, Jupiter is a spiritual planet here, or is this like a deep yes that's coming from deep within self and spirit, in terms of how to move forward? Because deep yes with spirit might be contra to what everybody else is doing in the family, how the family's always, done things. So I think that's what this Jupiter is asking, but also, again, it's a planet of vulnerability. So again, it might have different points, maybe before this big transformation, self-transformation, that might have been a real sticking point. If I parent my children in a vastly different way than the people around me, how is that going to, affect things or affect me or the way people see me and that sort of thing, So then Saturn is the lord of the 1st house of self and 12th house of losses, and it's on the 2nd house of family, 4th house of home and happiness, 8th house of deep psychology, 11th house of, friends. So that's also a planet of vulnerability. So obstacles, family, lineage, happening, deep say. So again, we're picking up more of this family and friends influencing happiness here. You see where I'm getting at? And then Mercury is the 5th lord and 8th lord. I mean, again, children, creativity, deep psychology, and Mercury's on the 1-7 axis. So again, how are these transformation of thoughts and, or maybe even destructive, because again, Purva Bhadrapt can be destructive. Maybe destructive thoughts and ideas are affecting children, creativity, deep psychology. Again, it looks like there's a lot of creativity potentially in this chart, for this person if it was, but it's being held back. And so maybe it's finally like breaking through those barriers of, how oneself was raised to do things differently, to, and to again reparent oneself and others, children, especially children, to create a whole new, really kind of rebellious path forward in life, especially related to, maybe how one was raised oneself. Okay, so yeah, if you really dig into this chart, you can kind of see where this restriction, self-restriction, has come from. So, what else do we have here? Okay, so then with the eclipse chart, I looked at some amshas or subdivisional charts. So this is we look at these are derived by just kind of slicing and dicing the main chart into smaller charts. And we can look at these. They give a little bit more detail, but they're mostly used for timing in terms of how things are going, like maybe are they getting better or worse when you shift the shop planets, okay? So just as a reminder, I put at the top here the shop period of Mars, Venus, Mercury, and that's shifting to Mars, Venus, K2 on 18th of March. So I circled those planets, Mars, Venus, Mercury, and then K2. Okay, so in this chart, we have 3 different amshas. The first one's an Navamsha D9 for partnerships, which clearly that's, of issue here. That's a Tamsha D7 for children, Dwadashamsa D12 for parents and grandparents, because we kept going back, tying in like second house of family. And again, eclipses again are always about generational change. So what do we see here? So for the D9 for partnerships, Venus is not well placed. It's with Swa Rahu, so that's in the third house. That's going to be unusual structural, aspected by Saturn. So unusual structural changes to relationship. Um, and then we have Mars and Sun in Parivartana. So that's an exchange of houses between the two fire leadership planets here. That's going to be a lot of fighting and a lot of change, but that's to be expected, And Mars represents, siblings and actions and CEO leadership. Sun represents king and father fighting, and Sun is literally the lord of the ninth house of father. Mars is the lord of the fifth house of children. So yeah, this isn't going to be like a easy breezy transition here. Let's just put it that way, but important to do nonetheless to really affect change, for oneself and again, generations. And then the first lord Jupiter is karako bhava nashaya again. So again, problems with children showing up in the partnerships, even though it's not the children chart, it's showing up in the partnerships. And then we've got Mercury with the Swan Mars. So again, a lot of fighting, related to children, maybe even rebelliousness, because Mars is there with Ketu. So it's going to be, rebelling against authority here is what we've got in the ninth house. So, and also, education. I would say because Jupiter and Mercury are together again in the fifth house. Then we have the Saptamsha D7 for children. So Ketu is not well placed. But it's in the eighth house, so it's going to be unusual changes. I would say to leadership, counseling, and children, because Jupiter is in the eighth house, so long, deep problems. And then we've got another Parivartana with Mars. So we have a Parivartana in the ninth house, or D9 for partnership. So a lot of fighting. And now we've got a Mars Jupiter Parivartana in the D7, and that's all. Those Parivartanas are activated because Mars is the main planetary period dasha, Mahadasha. So Mars is in the again ninth house of authority, father, and then it's exchanging with, so it'll be conjunct essentially with K2 and Jupiter in the eighth house of deep psychology. So again, deep psychology, authority, fighting, children. We're seeing more of that. So it's just reiterating basically the main chart. Then the Dwadashamsa D12 for parents, grandparents, because I was like, I don't think they're, it's off that, because again, when somebody changes in the family, it ripples out, not just to the kids, but, often to predecessors, not just the descendants, right? So Venus and Mercury not well placed. So again, some difficulties there. Acute issues, changes, ideas with ideas and relationships, because they're both in negative houses, the third house of change and the sixth house of acute issues. So again, I think there's the new ways of speaking and dealing with relationships, that can be problematic. But luckily, Mars is Swa in the seventh house of relationships. So that's pretty nice. And Mars and K2 are together again in the 10th house with Jupiter. So, with Jupiter and actually an aspect from Saturn. So, this is like an unexpected, unusual rebellion in terms of the way things are done on a day in a daily way related to structure and children and structural ideas in children, because it's an Aquarius again. So Aquarius in this D12 chart is the 10th house of daily actions. But again, you've got Saturn, Mars, Jupiter, K2, three natural malefics with Jupiter. That's a lot of change in terms of the way things are, old structural ideas, are being innovated here. Okay. So again, the change is happening on various generational levels here. So on this slide, we have the health amshas. So because again, we kept getting like shati bisha, which again relates, this could be also like medical, like mind, body, spirit, medicine, that sort of thing I mentioned. So I looked at the health amshas too. So again, the dasha periods at the top, Mars, Venus, Mercury shifting to Mars, Venus, K2, 18th of March. So the first chart here is the D6 for acute issues, then the D8 for chronic issues, and the Bhamsha D27 for strength and resilience. So In the first chart, K2 is not well placed, but it is in parivartana with the moon. So that's a little tricky. It'll bring strength, but with either usually moon or Mercury on with Rahu Ketu or on the Rahu Ketu axis, that can signal a lot of mental health issues. So again, I think this is more of a mental, there's some probably mental struggle going on here. Mars is on the second house, fifth house. So second house of family, fifth house of children, sixth house of acute issues. So that's going to be activated since we're in the Mars Mahadasha. The other thing I thought was interesting was Sun, Moon, Rahu, and Ketu are negative houses. Again, Sun, father, Moon, mother, Rahu, maternal grandparents, Ketu, paternal grandparents. So acute issues, with all that, which again is not unexpected from what we discussed in the main chart. Then the D8. So this is a Virgodama Lugna. It's the same rising sign as the main chart. So that means this chart's important. So K2 is not well placed again, but it's in the third house, signaling change, and it's with a Swa Mars. So again, pretty explosive, nonverbal communication here. Probably, again, K2 Swa there, and with a Swa Mars, this is going to be positive change that comes from this explosive energy. You could even think of it as like revolutionizing actions here, okay? Which is not too surprising, again, given what we talked about in the main chart. Then we have a debilitated Jupiter, Moon, and Sun in the 12th house. So again, we've got this Sun, Moon, Rahu, Ketu in negative houses, mom, dad, mom, grandparents, and then Jupiter as well. So you can see, how these amshas are basically reiterating the main chart. And the Jupiter here is debilitated as well. So not just in a negative house, but long-term losses, related to children and parents here. So it's definitely been a sticking point again for this person, or whatever this chart represents, eclipse chart represents. Then the Bamsha D27, strength and resilience, Mars, Venus, Ketu. Most of these planets are not well placed. So again, I don't think that this was easy. There's been a lot of contemplation, a lot of inner churn to get to this place of even wanting to change and demonstrate that change externally. But I think the saving grace here is Mercury so strong. Mercury is Swa in its own sign. So Swa Mercury, and it's also Digbala, directional strength, brings mental clarity and decisions and stuff like that. And again, from the main chart, Mercury's in Purva Bhadrapada. So a big shift, even structural shift in terms of ideas. Rahu, Ketu, Jupiter are in negative houses. Again, grandparents and children. So again, generational, so generational, ancestors and descendants are going to be feeling the shift here. And then we've got a son, Karako Babanasha, trouble with father. So you can see over and over, even though sun and that's with moon, So even though sun and moon are not negative houses, there's still challenges here with them, So, so again, I think there was a reason why Aquarius, the natal chart was an Aquarius Lugna, against stuck ideas. I mean, this stuck idea is not just for the native of the chart, but generational, stuck generational idea patterns that's having a breakthrough. So that's pretty interesting. So let's see. Okay, so second half of the talk here. So what does this have to do, with Lindsey Vonn and the Olympics? So let's talk about that. But just again, just knowing what the gestalt of the eclipse chart is, and presenting, in terms of a maybe question to all of us, how does that relate to Lindsey Vonn and the Olympics? Well, let's take a look. Okay, so a few words about, again, eclipses generally in sports. So it was kind of, I don't know, funny or ironic, I guess you could say. So I have a friend who went out to Italy for the Winter Olympics, and I was mentioning, talking about the eclipses and stuff, and they asked, when was the eclipse going to be? And I said, well, 17th of February, and they said, oh, that's when we're coming back. I said, well, that's interesting timing. And I said, well, when you go out there, you're probably going to have some big stories to tell from your experience out there because, again, eclipses bring unexpected changes. So what I've seen in terms of when I've looked at different sporting events and stuff like that in eclipses, if we, combine this eclipse expecting unexpected energy with sports, what I typically see during eclipse season with sports is you'll get new world records being set, which is not, probably too unusual for the Olympics because usually the Olympics is all about that. But also like very strange upsets in terms of who people think are going to win a game or an event or whatever. So, so some of the previous videos I have related to sports, well, I have a video on Simone Biles, who's an Olympic gymnast from the United States. I went through her birth chart, and in that video, I mentioned that for the Summer Olympics 2028 is we're going to have eclipses again. So that's going to bring a lot of hidden, unexpected energy. Okay. And then so again, that was more kind of looking forward in terms of, because people are probably, she was such a big, phenomenon in the last Summer Olympics that, at least in the United States, people are, really into her. But I was like, well, we'll see, if she comes back and then how that's going to play out with the Summer Olympics in 2020. So anyway, I went through all that in that video I did for her. Then another example with sports and eclipses was actually in October 2024. Shohei Ohtani is this Japanese guy who plays for Los Angeles baseball team. He became, during eclipse season, he became the first person to be part of what they call 50-50 club. So he had 50 stolen bases and 50 home runs in one season. So that's the world baseball record, that was set. And so that's a, positive thing that happened that, nobody really expected. I mean, they probably expected it for him, but it was interesting that the timing happened during eclipse. And also, he's a very standout, unexpected person who has this unique. And that's the thing, on the positive side with Rahu and Ketu, which form these eclipses, this is a very unique or idiosyncratic, sometimes quirky type of energy that comes through. So, on the probably people would see this 50-50 record for him as a positive thing. So that came through during eclipse season. And then more recently, last year, the last eclipse season, actually, I have a video titled, so the Shohei Ohtani record I have in my Transits October 2024 video, if you want to check that out. But then more recently, in the solar eclipse from September 21st to 2025, so the last solar eclipse that happened 6 months ago, and I have a whole video on that. And I went through the New Zealand national birth chart. And I talked about how there was going to be a pretty big upset related to like government authority and stuff like that. And what happened within a week of that eclipse, New Zealand's national team of women's rugby, they'd been dominating the women's rugby scene for I don't know how many years. I think they had like 5 or 6 championships under their belt or something. And I think in the semifinals or something like that, they lost to Canada. And Canada had only been to the finals in women's rugby like once before. Like complete underdog, beat New Zealand. So that was a big upset. So, yeah, you can kind of see like it can go either way, where it's like this massive new world record that's set, or strange upsets that are just kind of bizarre, which is the energy of eclipses. Okay. So probably one of the biggest stories so far with the Olympics relates to Lindsey Vonn. So let's take a look. Okay, so this is her birth chart, actually. She was born 18th of October, 1984, 3:26 a.m., St. Paul, Minnesota, USA. So again, just a blank chart, so you can take a look at that without all my notes and stuff like that. So if we start going through it, well, what's her lugna, her rising sign? She's a Leo, or Simha rising sign, which is fixed fire. So we just went through Aquarius, so fixed, air, fixed ideas, fixed fire is fixed, actions, consistent actions. She's going to be very set in her physical action ways, which, again, as a skier, professional athlete, she would need to be. She needs to get up and practice and get on the slopes and do her training and all this kind of stuff, right? So her lagna is aspected by Jupiter. So again, wisdom, potentially balance, equilibrium. So which she needs, for staying upright on her skis and sliding down these slopes at amazing paces. I mean, speeds. Jupiter happens to be in a nakshatra called Mula. Mula is symbolized by a bunch of roots tied together, and I often think of farming with Mula, which maybe is unconventional, but Mula is an unconventional sign, or nakshatra, because the star of Mula is Ketu. So she's got some Jupiter Ketu energy in her chart. Okay, Jupiter also relates to speech, but Jupiter and Mula might be somebody who's like actually not into speaking so much. Like this is so much just from this. I was like, she's probably not so much a speaker; she's a doer. You know. But the Lugna nakshatra is in Purva Falguni, which is symbolized by a hammock or a marital bed. So Purva Falguni is all about enjoying the finer things of life and that kind of stuff, and social grace and social interactions and stuff like that. The Lugnatia, so her ruling planet is going to be the Sun because she's a Leo rising. So I circled Sun. It's in the third house, which is a negative house, and it's in its debilitation sign. The other thing is that it's a Sundi because it's in the first degree. So this is going to be a very unstable lord of her chart. And Sun also represents general health. So already from this, somebody who's going to have, some problems with health, okay, maybe due to unstable balance, okay, because Jupiter represents equilibrium, and Jupiter being in Mula, this could be like an unusual balance, maybe positive and maybe negative. And since Jupiter's a dual sign, or dual planet in a dual sign of Sagittarius, this could be, having good balance is really key for her well-being, which it is, right? The thing about Sun is it is brought up because it's with Saturn, which is in its exaltation sign in Sun's debilitation sign. So we would say Sun is Banga. That's going to pull up the Sun a bit, not entirely. But if Saturn wasn't here, I mean, Sun would be toast. Okay, let's just put it that way. And Sun again represents general health. And not only general health for everybody as a planet, but especially for her because it's her ruling planet. Okay. So in the first house which represents general health and well-being. So there's indications there. And then the thing is this Sun is in Chitra. Chitra is symbolized by a gemstone, which is again bringing this energy of like wealth and abundance. Okay. So so we have two indications of wealth, finer things of life here. Because gemstone, I mean, it's not like it's a luxury good, right? So we'll actually see in her chart that kind of energy quite a bit. And then she's in her Lugna nakshatra is in Purva Falguni, so enjoyment. And then her ruling planet has gone to the third house, which is a Kamasthana, a house of enjoyment. So she's all about enjoying herself and the finer things of life. I mean, and that's part of what she does, actually. So, because like skiing, I mean, you could, a lot of us get by through life without ever getting on a ski slope and that sort of thing. So even like what she does, it's kind of a luxury sport, So Sun is with Mercury, which is combust. So you can't see Mercury. We've been talking about combustion a lot. So Sun. The other thing is Sun represents the central nervous system, and also like the spine. Then Mercury represents medically like the peripheral nerves. So central nervous system, peripheral nerves. And Sun Mercury is in a nakshatra called Swati. Swati is symbolized by new grown grass blowing in the wind. So there's this like fragile energy here. Okay. So fragile energy in the nervous system. Okay. Mercury is also bhavat bhavam, the second lord. It's a second lord gone 2 houses away. So again, there's this like and since Mercury is Swati, I would say she probably does some talking because she needs to, with like the interviews on camera and stuff. But she's more of a doer than a speaker. So I don't know how much speaking she actually does. Like, I don't know, because sometimes like these athletes, they go and they become professional speakers after they, maybe they've retired from their careers or something like that. I don't think with Jupiter being in Mula, Mercury, these are the two communication, Mercury being in Swati, Jupiter being in Mula, I don't think looks like she's got, kind of nervousness related to speaking. So she's probably more of a doer. And then we've got with this Sun and Mercury, we've got an exalted Saturn and Vishaka. So Saturn is definitely, dominating the Sun and Mercury. So again, Saturn represents endurance. Saturn represents like physicality, but like more of like metals, like iron. Like what I was saying here is she's got an iron will to overcome this nervousness, and which probably people are surprised, that she's nervous because she does these like amazing physical feats or whatever. But I think that's because of her iron will, is what I would say. And Saturn's in Vishaka. Vishaka is symbolized by a victory gate, but it's related to victory at all costs. So her iron will helps her get over her nervousness and these physical, injuries and stuff like that, to keep going at it. I mean, and do these like amazing things, and that's why she's famous, and she keeps, showing up at the Olympics, and also. And again, I think now if we start tying in this like wealth and enjoyment and stuff like this is also about her sponsorships. Okay, because that's an important, that's how she, I think, mostly gets paid. So if we pulled all this together, unstable or ill health, nervous, but with an iron will to sort of overcome all that, winning at any cost. So again, her will might at times put her in jeopardy for overdoing things with her body, which I think was an issue with her. She, if you're not familiar, she's in the alpine ski division at the Olympics, and she had a major crash that happened on the 8th of February, which I'll be talking about. But before that, I think a week or two before that, she was skiing in Europe, and she had another crash and injured her ACL, so one of the ligaments that keeps her knees together. And so she went into this Olympics already injured. So again, it's this kind of like mind over matter, and iron will over matter type of energy she's got in her chart. Okay. So, and the other thing with Sun, Mercury, and Saturn together, when I see those planets together, this can signal pain because Sun is a central nervous system, Mercury is a peripheral nerves, and Saturn is the neuromuscular junction. I mean, I see pain here, So, but it also gives her like this amazing coordination, neuromuscular coordination, because the third house relates to cognitive function, and so it's like the way that her nervous system communicates with her body and gets her to do all these amazing things. That's very strong for her as well. So it's kind of a mixed bag, what the third house is giving with this Sun, Mercury, Saturn combination. She might be, her nonverbal actions might be the subject of a lot of talk, which I think that's true. But, when we tie in this luxury bit, with the Purva Falguni and the Chitra and the Lagna, she's basically going to be an ambassador for luxury brands, which is essentially what she is. Like if you look at even her the first slide where I have a picture of her, I don't know if you can see all of them, but on her hat she has like a Red Bull label, and then on the top of her jersey she's got Milka. So Red Bull is an energy drink. I mean, that's not like, people don't need that in life to exist. It's a luxury item. And then Milka is a chocolate company, European chocolate. So again, luxury items so she's bringing in, she's an ambassador for these luxury goods, essentially. Because it's kind of funny. I mean, like her chart, I'm seeing more luxury brand ambassador than actually skier. I think it ties in because That's how she gets the attention. That's how she does the advertising, is through the skiing, more than the speaking. So she's not like on TV and commercials, but she's bringing attention to these luxury brands through her skiing. So yeah, that was kind of interesting. So what else do we have here? So that's her lugna. Now again, remember when we're talking about the eclipse, opposite of Leo is Aquarius. So if you just take that solar eclipse chart I went through and flip it upside down, she's still got going on with this eclipse season. She's got a tension between her first house of self and seventh house of partnerships. So especially when she has a major crash like that, and then, she's kind of literally out of the game. I don't know how that affects her, partnerships, but I'm sure it does, at least, acutely, but also, potentially in the long term. We'll take a look at that. But so if we start looking at her seventh house, which is Aquarius, which is where the solar eclipse is happening. Now, again, the lunar eclipse is going to happen in her lugna. Well, again, personality, general health, identity, that's all first house stuff. Her seventh house lord is Venus. Venus has Digbal directional strength. It's in the fourth house of home. And it's with an exalted Ketu and Anurata. Both of those planets are in Anurata. Anurata is all about like success, but through forming alliances. So she's really good. Um, oh, sorry, that's not the seventh lord. That's the 10th lord here. I got to fix that. Sorry. So many details to keep track of. So sorry, this is the 10th lord for her, is this Digbala Venus with an exalted Ketu and Anurata. So she's really, her day-to-day work is really, she's really great at forming alliances. Now, Venus, again, is a planet symbolizing finer things of life and luxury items. So we keep getting that in her chart, Venus also represents women. And Venus, when it aspects into the 10th house here, is with Rahu. So Rahu is, an unusually ambitious woman, which she is, but also, unusual luxury items, um, yeah. So, and Rahu's in this nakshatra called Kritika. Kritika, I did a whole video on that, where it's sort of like this golden warrior type of energy. So I think she's like the golden warrior woman, is what I'm seeing in her chart. And actually, Kritika, even though the deity associated with Kritika is Kartikeya, who's the commander-in-chief of the celestial army, but he's got this armor of gold. So even Kritika like has this kind of fighting warrior energy to it, but there's also wealth related to Kritika because of the gold armor. So again, what is it? 4 different indications of like luxury and wealth and stuff like that, and finer things in life we're seeing in a chart, So yeah, so that's let's see what else we find from our chart. Okay, so now I get into seventh house. Sorry, mixed that up a little bit. So the seventh house here is her Aquarius. So this is again where the solar eclipse is happening. Again, the seventh house is personal relationships, like spouse like partner, business partnerships, independent business, and path forward in life. So this is where the major transformation for her is going on. This is the part of her life that's gonna experience this like massive transformation of ideas. Because again, this lord of the seventh house is this exalted Saturn in Vishaka. So part of, I think, what's driving her, in terms of the decisions and things and all the marketing, whatever, is like, these really fixed ideas related to partnerships. Now that may be, she's dealing with these major international companies. I don't know how much flexibility there is in the contract there, having her sign or whatever, but I think it could be on both sides. Also, like, the partners are this Vishaka, like victory at all costs, even related to her health. She's the one putting her body on the line, even like her life on the line, not just her body and her health, but her life on the, if she falls the wrong way, I mean, that's the end of the game. I mean, long game for her, But the other thing is that her ideas related to partnerships might need to be revamped. She might need to reparent herself in terms of look at her fixed ideas about partnerships. Maybe she's like, one of these, well, I'm going to live by my contracts, type of people or whatever. And maybe she needs to rework that so that she's not, compromising her health so much potentially, or her nervous system, her injuries and all this kind of stuff. So I think for her, that's what she's going to, well, clearly she's already experienced change just from her crash, but then what is she going to do about it moving forward, And I don't know how that works at all. Like if she crashes, like, it's just the whole thing's over, like the contract's null and void, or is it she gets some sort of compensation or assistance with, recovery? I don't even know how that works, but there's a lot there, I'm sure. So the other thing is this Lord of her seventh house. So the exalted Saturn Vishika has gone 9 houses away, which is related to authority. So, again, what I'm seeing here is not only is she iron-willed, but her, again, partnerships is like an iron-willed management. Like there's no cutting of slack or anything like that. Like it doesn't look like. So that's a lot to sign up for, But that's also like, that's kind of that, the more you risk, the more you gain type of thing, kind of mentality that goes around, So her birth dasha, Saturn, K2, Mars. Well, again, Saturn is this, iron will, kind of keeping her together. K2 and Mars are very like, again, explosive energies. Mars and K2 together can signal injuries and illness, accidents. So Mars can signal surgery. K2 can be like unusual. So, iron will overcome unusual accidents, that kind of thing. Again, I think this is tapping into the pain because Saturn, we're looking at Saturn. And this also gives her a fiery mind. So, especially this Mars, excuse me, because it's in the 5th house of intellect, but it's also aspecting her 8th house of deep psychology. And Mars is going to be like a rebellious energy, physical energy, can be a leadership energy. Excuse me. So yeah. So again, this is bringing in her, because you would have to be. I mean, who would even, I mean, I don't ski. I've tried it. I injured myself. I'm like, that's enough for me. Like, I'm like, I'm kind of the opposite of her. Like, I don't really like to put my body in situations where it's like I could get injured. I try to avoid that at most costs. I kind of go the other way with avoiding things at all costs. But that's what she, lives by in her brand and her whole identity here. So, she's going to be very fiery and kind of rebellious in that kind of way. So the Dasha appeared on 8th of February 2026, and this is when she had her accident at the Olympics. She was running Venus, Sun, Mercury, Moon. Okay, so Sun is this Sundhi debilitated but Bunga Sun, so general health, is up for grabs here. Venus, this is her drive, Venus aspecting its own sign in the 10th house with Rahu. This is an ambitious drive towards being an ambassador for luxury goods. Okay. Mercury is here. There was some nervousness going on. Okay. The other thing is Venus is lord of the 10th house of knees, and she had a major blowout. I don't know all her list of injuries, but her leg, I think, had multiple fractures or something. And then Mercury is the lord of the 11th house here, which is the lower leg, cap and shin. I think she broke her tibia in multiple places. So that's all there. And then we've got Moon, which is interesting because Moon is in the 12th house of expenditures and losses. Moon is luckily in its own sign, so there's some protection there. But this, she's running as a sub-period moon, this could mean she's actually going to, like, public moon represents public, but also the 12th house represents isolated places like the hospital, which is where she landed, right? So after the accident. So what's also interesting in her chart is like Moon and Mercury, the two mind planets, are in negative houses. Moon is supported because it's in its own sign, but Mercury is in Swati. So again, I do think that even though she presents as this like massively courageous, downhill skier, or alpine skier, I don't know if those are the same things, but um, I think she does feel it. She doesn't present that way, but I think she does feel it internally in terms of the risks associated with all this stuff. I think the other thing is that with these two mind planets in negative houses, I think when she's not active in skiing, because again, the sun, this fixed action, fixed fire sign sun and rising sign, she's going to keep going out there. She's going to get injured. She's going to put herself back together and she's going to go out there again over and over and over again. She's got these fixed actions, but that may also be because she's going to have like that. If you take that eclipse chart, turn it upside down, Mars and Ketu is going to be in her first house here, which is again accidents, injuries, but also massive explosive transformation of self. So yeah, that's all kind of where she's at. Let's see. So dasha period, Venus, Sun, Mercury, Moon, ambition, women, also Venus and Moon, women. So she was a part of this Olympics. So she was going for summer record as far as like women. I think she was trying to be the oldest woman to win a medal in her competition or something. Was that the one she was? She was going for something like that. And but definitely health issues involved. Ill health, nervousness. Again, I think she knew going in, you know, she was injured going into this competition, which is a pretty big deal. But she pushed through that. And again, maybe that was, I don't know if that was her pushing through or her sponsors or her relationship with her sponsors that, had her decide to do that. I mean, I don't know what the losses would have been to her if she had chosen not to do that. I don't know if it might have been a little bit of an ego thing because Rahu in the 10th house of Venus is, Rahu can signal not just ambition, but like kind of like an ego drive, almost the obsession even, can be with Rahu. So, yeah, but the moon is also going to bring losses and, trying to manage those. So for her, the Chitra grahas are Mars, Jupiter, Moon, and Saturn. So Mars and Jupiter, this is in the 5th house of, counseling. This could be legal issues. So again, this might be contracts, that, are kind of push her to do more. Like if she wasn't contracted and getting heavily paid, like maybe she would make different choices related to whether she enters these competitions or not. The moon, again, the mind, feelings, that sort of thing. Saturn here, having this iron will, being pretty, um, potentially rigid about the decisions she's making regarding her self and her career and her identity and all this kind of stuff. Like, so when we look at these chittagrahas, this could be like long-term injuries, legal losses from these kind of wild public stunts that she does. I mean, like Jupiter and Mars together can bring enthusiasm, and it's in the 5th house, which is a natural 5th house as a stage. So there's going to be a lot of enthusiasm here. I mean, she's a big popular figure in the public around the world. That's also going to be the moon in its own sign in the 12th house. That's going to be international public acclaim. And then Venus in its own aspecting its own house in the 10th. I mean, also like moon, and moon is like the face. She's known for having a very pretty face, attractive face. And Venus aspecting its own sign in the 10th. I mean, this is going to be her, socializing and hobnobbing and kind of putting herself out there as like, again, this brand ambassador with these like super cool, ski costumes with the colors and all, all that jazz. So, But there's going to be some pretty wild, stunts is what I'm seeing here. Jupiter and Mars, bringing that. So again, I think this might be the reparenting that this eclipse brings for her now that she's had this major accident. Like maybe that'll change, again, because she's a fixed sign. Even though it's been maybe a long time coming, this sort of thing might change the way that her relationship with herself and the way that she chooses to manage herself, and her reparenting of self. So we will see about that, but let's see what else we have about her. Okay, so here I have the sky pattern on 8th of February next to her chart. So on the left is her chart, what we just went through, and then the sky pattern on 8th of February. So what I did with this 8th February chart, I oriented so that it's also a Leo Lugna like her, so we can compare charts like apples to apple type of thing. So this chart was based on being in Cortina, Italy, which is where the crash site was. Now, already Leo, the rising sign, represents a stage, like as a place. So this is a stage. And Mars was aspecting Ketu here. Okay, so as I mentioned, Mars and Ketu together bring this explosive energy, accidents, injuries. So it's right at the top. Okay, so that's what she was experiencing. So we can kind of see this, 8th of February chart as a transit chart for her on the day when she crashed. Now, the dasha period for this transit chart is Rahu, Venus, Saturn, Mercury. Okay, Rahu, Venus, Mercury. Look at all this in the 7th house of partnerships. Okay, and we already know, like Rahu, I think they were all, maybe not. Rahu and Mercury were in Shatabisha, I believe, yeah. And then Venus was in Dhanistha, right? Sun Dhanistha. I believe so. Yes, Venus was in Dhanistha, Mercury and Rahu and Shatabisha. So again, this ambition to drive, independent business relationships here was what was going on for her. Okay, and let's see the Lugnaceous Sun. And look, Sun is almost Sunday again. It's getting to the edge of Capricorn in the 6th house of acute injuries, acute medical problems. So Sun is unstable again. Sun is in Dhanistha, so this is, again, rhythm of health is going to be disrupted by this Mars it's with. Mars is exalted, so Sun is in Dhanistha, which is a star of Mars, and it's with Mars, so Sun is going to be dominated by Mars. So, like, really impulsive actions leading to injuries, Mars is in Shravana. Shravana is all about history, oral histories. And so this is a story about an accident, unstable health. Sun also represents bone. So there's a bone break here. Mars can represent surgery. So that's all going on. Ketu. So the other thing about Mars and Ketu, look at the exact degree. So literally 2 days before, Mars is almost in the exact degree as Ketu. So it was literally in the exact degree a couple of days ago. So that in and of itself can also like set things off. So again, Ketu and Mars together, accident, injury, rupture here. The 7th house, we've got Venus and Dhanistha. So again, this is her, Venus is the lord of her 10th house of, day-to-day activity. So it's going to disrupt her. There's going to be weird disruption in her schedule. Also, Venus, karako, bhava, nashaya. Venus in the 7th house indicates problems with relationships. Mercury and Shatabisha. So this is like a unusual medical issues that are hard to diagnose. And again, Venus is not seen, and I don't remember if Mercury was combust at that time or not. But again, Mercury is the lord of the 11th house of lower leg, and it's also the lord of the 2nd house of assets. Oh, look, Mercury is also the lord of the 2nd house of assets and the 11th house of income, so that's troublesome. Venus is the lord of the 3rd house of like arms and hands, and also the 10th house of knees. So apparently what happened was that as she was going out of the gate to go down the hill, her arm hit or touched the side of the gate or something like that, and it kind of spun her just enough that it threw her, balance off. And then she tumbled down the hill, or I guess, or something. So it was some like very small, minute detail, and Mercury represents detail of some weird glitch that happened that threw her rhythm off. And then it hurt, from her, because of her arm. But then, it ended up breaking her leg. So, and then we've got an aspect here by Jupiter. Jupiter and Mercury can represent news. But Jupiter as a planet represents equilibrium, and it's in this Punarvasu arrow, cycling energy. So this could be, again, cycling, an unusual detail disrupting the cycling rhythm, like this, like skiing down the slopes, swishing back and forth type of thing. And creating an unusual rhythm with arms and legs. Bad news, I would say. Friends and family were there, witnessing and supporting her, but also witnessing all this. And then Saturn, look at Saturn. Saturn is the lord of the 6th house of acute issues. It's gone to the 8th house of chronic issues, and Saturn represents structure. And then it's also the lord of the 7th house of, again, partnerships and path forward in life. So there's going to be acute issues becoming prominent, or at least chronic, and then partnerships as well. So that all basically went down the tubes for her, right? So in a moment there. So looking at the notes under her chart. So again, there's similarities. It doesn't seem very similar, but there are similarities between her chart and this February 8th chart. So again, Sunday Sun, that's basically the same, conjoined with Mars in the 6th house. I mean, Sun is with Saturn. So it's with, basically, in either chart, Sun is unstable because it's Sunday, but it's also with natural malefics. So that's going to bring Sun, again, the representative of her whole chart, because it's her ruling planet, but also her general health is going to bring that down. And then the 6th lord is Saturn. So Saturn in both of these charts is a negative house, 3rd house for the first chart, 8th house for the second chart. So unstable health, accident, bones, acute and chronic issues. And then she's got Venus with Rahu in both charts. I mean, in the 10th house of day-to-day work, but then she's got in the 7th house of independent business and partnerships. But there's this real drive, like almost obsessive drive, to partner with luxury brands. And actually, this Venus is bhavam in the second chart here, which, so this 10th lord has gone 10 houses away. This is going to be like one brand, luxury brand partnership after another. That's basically put, on the 8th of February here. Then look, Moon is in a negative house in both charts. The 12th house in the native chart and the 3rd house here. So, and Moon, it's kind of interesting too. Like Mercury was in Swati, that new grown grass blowing in the wind, this kind of, which signals like nervousness and fragility. She's got Mercury in Swati in her main chart, and she's got Moon in Swati in the second chart here. So again, there's this like nervous mind and feelings, in both of these charts here. So she may not have been feeling so well, or again, especially after this accident, she may not have been feeling, I'm sure she wasn't feeling well, but also like issues with the public as well. Nervous, it's made the public nervous, I'm sure. So there's actually, like, especially when you look at the details, quite a bit of similarity between these two charts. But yeah, so that's kind of how it all happened on the 8th of February regarding her injury. So then what I looked at for her was I went into her amshas to get more detail about timing. So on this chart, I looked at the D9 for partnerships, D10 for career and reputation, D11 for public support and income, to kind of see where that's all heading, especially based on her accident. And then on the next chart, I look at the health amshas to see how her health is going to be. So just to remind you, the current dasha for her is Venus, Sun, Mercury, Moon. So I circled those planets. And then she's going to be running Venus Moon from June 2026 through February 2028. Now, remember from her natal chart, she's got Moon in its own sign in the 12th house. So to me, and the 12th house represents remote places, hospital, and that sort of thing. To me, that just in and of itself is signaling that probably for the next year and a half or so, or 2 years, because February 2028, she's going to be, I think, in recovery mode. So the other thing is that about this February 2028 time is when Saturn shifts into Aries. So Saturn's going to move out of Pisces. So for her, that's her, which house is that? Her 8th house of chronic problems. And it's going to move into her 9th house of authority. So that may be, again, like a pretty big shakeup in terms of like partnerships and stuff like that, management. Okay. Which I think would potentially feed into this whole general notion with this current solar eclipse of reparenting. Like, especially after this, she might really be rethinking like how she goes about contracting herself in terms of what she's willing to risk for herself, in terms of the payout or something like that. So let's go through these charts. So again, D9 partnerships. So she's got a Virgodama Lugnam with 4 grahas. Okay, super important chart, partners, which again is not surprising given either her natal chart or the February 8th chart. Yeah. Look, Sun is debilitated here, just like the main chart. I mean, that's pretty wild, right? It's not well placed, but it is in Parivartana with Venus. So actually, it's good that she's running Venus and Sun. But because it's in Parivartana exchange of houses with Sun and Venus, this Venus is basically really boosting and holding her Sun together. And again, Sun is her ruling planet for the whole chart, so all of her, and it's her planet representing general health. So Venus is forklifting, again, not entirely, but it's really helping support Sun and the debility of Sun. Okay. But it's not without issue because Venus is in the Lugna, but we've got 3 malefics on it, K2, Mars, and Sun. So it's not, easy breezy, but better than not. I mean, so luckily she's activating this Parivartana, which will help a lot. So trouble with relationships and probably even aggressive leadership, I would say, because also look at this. We've got Saturn debilitated in Aries, which is where Saturn will go February 2028. But then she's got Sun aspecting there. So again, a pretty aggressive, management system that she's got in place potentially. Saturn, in Aries could be like a break with really strong, leadership, kind of partners and stuff like that, authority or management. Mercury and Moon, since those are sub-periods, those are an ordinary condition. Those are okay. I think, again, this partnerships is really lighting up like it did in her main chart. Then the D10 for Korean reputation. So Moon is not well placed, but it is exalted in the 2nd and the 6th house. So again, concerns, about mental, emotional concerns, I would say. And it's with 2 natural malefics. So again, not super strong. So she's probably feeling this, which is not surprising. Now look at this. She's got another Sun and Venus parivarta. Sun is debilitated again, but Venus is basically, supporting, pulling up the Sun here. And now she's got in the D9, she had debilitated Saturn with an exalted Sun and Venus in the 9th house of management. And now she's got a Swa Sun, Venus, and K2 with an aspect of Jupiter. So, again, luxury brands is what I keep, management of luxury brands and stuff like that, and partnerships and stuff like that is really important. Yeah, master of news, again, like media news, many luxury goods in public. Like, again, that's what I was seeing in her chart is like her chart doesn't actually show skier. It shows luxury brand ambassador. I mean, she does the skiing. That's how she gets attention to the brands, but her real job, so to speak, is like the luxury brand ambassador. So So again, Venus is forklifting this sun, debilitated sun. So that's good news. And again, she's going to be running this Venus dasha through 2041. So just from this, I don't think, her career is over, partnerships is over by any means. So that's, I think, probably good news for her. I think the only thing is that from all this, she may want to think about, her contract details and stuff like that, and how much support, how much risk she's putting out for herself, and then what she's actually getting in return. I think that, again, that kind of reparenting, type of things, kind of idea. And then the Ekadamsha D11 for public support and income. So this is income, but also like awards and stuff. And she's got like, I don't know how many gazillion awards from skiing. But look at this, sun is not well placed. So again, challenges the sun, general health, but it is exalted. So that's good. It's in the 6th house of income. So there's probably some support during troubled times. But look at this. She's got a swa Mars in its own sign. She's got a swa Jupiter. She's got a swa. She's got an exalted Venus. I mean, this is like loads and loads of money and awards. So, yeah, and she's running Venus. So, I'm not too worried about career and, finances and partnerships for her based on all this. Okay. Venus is exalted in the 5th house, so love and support on the stage. I think people are very supportive of her. I think the thing, though, is what is coming up, which is similar to her main chart, is that look at where Moon and Mercury are. They're with Rahu and Ketu, with a Swa Rahu aspected by Saturn, where it's in its own sign. This is going to be a lot of mental, and then so Moon and Mercury are with 4 malefic planets. And this is in the 4th house of happiness. I mean, I think that there's like a lot of mental, emotional stress associated with this, and will be for a while, because again, she's running the moon subperiod through February. So again, I think things will go well for her, but I think she's going to be really stressed out about it. So difficulties, worries, even obsessive, trying to establish mental, emotional, even physical balance and happiness. Like that's going to be her challenge for the next couple of years, I think. I see a lot of support here. I don't see things going down the tubes by any means, especially regarding partnerships, career, and income, and all that. But she may worry about it, a lot of it, which again is not surprising given what I talked about in the main chart, like Mercury and Swati. Nervous. That's going to bring a nervous energy. Moon in the 12th house. Um, so yeah. So that's what we're seeing here. So the next slide we have our health amsha. So let's just see how our health is going to be. And so we have the D6 for acute issues, and the D8 for chronic issues, and the D27 for strength and resilience. So look at this, Mercury and Moon not well placed at the top here. And then look at the second chart, Mercury and Moon not well placed. So you see what I'm seeing here? Like, again, I think this is going to be more of a mental and emotional issue, acutely, because we're running subperiods of Mercury Moon, but then she's going to run Venus Moon from June of this year till February 2028, where she's going to take some time off, I think, and recover and all that kind of stuff. And again, luckily, Moon is in its own sign, and it's in Push as well, which is nice. Push is a nice nakshatra. Push is all about like mental, emotional stabilizing and nurturing and stuff like that. So again, that also, and Moon also represents, mothering. So again, I think during the next couple of years, her big transformation related to this solar eclipse is like, how is she going to nurture and mother herself? Physically, mentally, emotionally, contractually with partners, her sponsors and all this kind of jazz. Yeah. But all right, so let's take it one by one. So D6, Mercury, Moon not well placed, like the natal chart, more trouble, mental, emotional. Also, this is on the Rahu Ketu axis. That can give, like, again, obsessive, compulsive kind of issues. Venus is Swa. That's great. So, that's a good basis for recovery. And Sun is also exalted. So that's super great. So acute issues, that's a really good sign for recovery. There are 3 malefics on Venus. So again, Venus is doing heavy duty lifting for all of these charts. And that's been like, that's pretty clear. So thank God she's running Venus. So and the other thing is Venus is here in its own sign in the 5th house of counseling. This is going to be really good, practical advice regarding Saturn and Mars, physical and Sun, physical health issues. So she's going to get excellent advice regarding physical health recovery and all the therapy and whatever surgery and stuff she needs. So that's all great. That's all very supportive. So I think she's going to do as well as anybody can regarding these, this specific crash. Then the D8, Mercury, Moon, not well placed, but Mercury is exalted in the 3rd house. So again, there's going to be a mental, emotional change here. This might also be again, part of this mental, emotional issue too is she's so active. Part of it is just I think the endorphin withdrawal with these super active, athletes and stuff who are always on the go. A lot of them don't know how to slow down, and they kind of have this addiction to, just the high of being on the slopes or running long distances or whatever their sport is, But look at this. We've got another Parivartana here with Venus. Venus is doing, so, her Venus is doing some major lifting here. And Venus, again, is an Anurata for her. So, again, she's got this really massive support system that's going to support her through both acute and chronic injuries during this Venus dasha that she's running, which is really awesome to see. Very hopeful, in terms of outcomes for her regarding all this crash and all this kind of stuff, again, health-wise and professionally and income and all that stuff. So she's got a Parivartana between Mercury and, Venus and Saturn. And then she's also got does she have another one? She has another Parivartana. She's not running it, but she has another Parivartana with Mars and Jupiter. So there's a lot of strength in this chart, of chronic issues. Sun is exalted, Moon is exalted, Saturn's exalted and in Parivartana. Venus is in Parivartana. Moon. So this is kind of her massive ability to regenerate is what I'm seeing in her D8, which is awesome. So that's also very hopeful for her. Venus is in her 11th house of lower leg. And it's in Parivartana with Saturn in her 8th house of deep psychology, Rahu and Ketu. So again, I think there can be some worries here, but I'm seeing recovery, And then the Bhamsha D27, this is general strength and resilience, which you're already seeing, but let's just take a look. So Sun is not well placed. It's with Rahu and aspected by Mars. So long-term issues, unusual disruptions to health. With her sub-period Sun she's running. Look at this, another Parivartana of Venus and Mars this time. I mean, Venus is just amazing, a huge shield. Huge shield of protection for her. I mean, she's got Venus's Swa and then Parivartana twice in all of her health amshas. I mean, that's as good as you can get it, I think. So that's really good news for her. The Sun is not well placed. It's with Rahu. So I do think that, she will have long-term health issues because she does what she does. She's going to get banged up. But so another Parivartana, Venus and Mars. So, God bless her Venus. It's really helping her out. But look at this chart. I mean, Swa Mars through Parivartana, Swa Venus through Parivartana. Moon is is a Swa, Jupiter Swa. So exalted Rahu, I mean, again, her subcharts are, phenomenal here. Her D11 was amazing. Her D8's amazing. She's, this is not the last we've seen of Lindsey. Let's just put it that way. She might need to rework some things for her as she has this time, the gift of time. Looks like she's going to be kind of, off the slopes for a while. But again, especially once she finishes her moon period, February 2028, because moon, she's going to be kind of off the grid till the end of, until February 2. Then after her moon period, we might see her pop up again, is what I'm seeing here. But let's just finish this off. So, and her moon, that's also, this is great. What I was happy to see, especially in her D27, is her moon is Swa, in the 4th house of happiness. So, but there are some issues, it's got Digbal and Swa, so it's a strong moon, but it's also Karko Bhavanasha. So it's an exaggerated moon, but mostly strong. So even the mental and emotional issues that come along with all that she does, it looks like in the long term, she's able to recover and keep going. I mean, so, when I'm seeing all this is like a good recovery time at home to recover and all this. Again, the mental emotional stuff might be a little bit of a sticking point, but even that seems like in the long term she's able to overcome, which is pretty awesome. So yeah, no, I don't think Lindsay's career is over, and I think we'll be seeing more of her once she has some time to kind of recoup and recover, and also kind of rethink maybe how she, goes about taking care of herself moving forward in the future. So here, I mentioned, so this is the list of, again, if you're interested in sports and astrology, this is a list of, I do have a video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2025 where I list all the famous charts I've analyzed, not just the sports related ones. But these are the sports-related charts I've looked at as of February 2026. So I looked at Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's a basketball player in the NBA. Also, Adolf and Rudolf Dassler, two brothers. One founded Adidas athletic shoe company. The other one founded Puma athletic shoe company. Jesse Owens is an Olympic sprinter from the United States. He qualified for the 100-meter race in 1936. Also, the first Tour de France bicycle race. And then you have the videos listed before them. So, like Jesse Owens and first Tour de France bicycle race were in my Transit July 2024 video. Simone Biles, I mentioned, Olympic gymnast. She has her own video. Shohei Ohtani, for a baseball record for 50-50 stolen bases and home runs. He's in my Transits October 2024 video. I do talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger and his chart. He was a world competitive bodybuilder before he became an actor and governor of California. But he's in two of my videos, Shubh Prabha Kartra Yogas and Parvata and Kahala Yogas. So he's in a couple of videos. Also, New Zealand, because of the shift with the status of the women's rugby team, the women's rugby team. That chart I looked at in the solar eclipse. Do that. Let me slow down. I'm getting tired here. Solar eclipse, 21 September 2025 video. Also, Duchi Chand, I looked at her. She's an Olympic sprinter from India. She's in my Transit January 2025 video. I also looked at Jackie Chan. He's known more as an actor, but he's a very strong sportsman in terms of martial arts. He's in my Gauri Yoga video. Also looked at Cristiano Ronaldo, very famous soccer player these days. He's in that video as well. And then I looked at Travis Kelce's chart, who's an American football player, and he's in my synastry or compatibility video because he's engaged to Taylor Swift. So, very powerful, influential woman. So, again, if you're interested in astrology or sports, some of these might be interesting for you as well. Okay, so as always, thanks so much for stopping by and listening to one of my talks. I appreciate all your support for my work and the channel. Again, all my teaching videos are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. For famous birth charts of all kinds, check out my birth charts archive list 2025 video, which I should be updating soon to pick up all the, last videos I've done in the previous year. Also, I do offer individual birth chart readings and astrology courses, so if any of that's interesting to you, you can email heartlightastro@yahoo.com for more info on those things. And I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, as well as yoga, homeopathy, and naturopathic medicine. And the name of that channel is Nature Source Care, so that's out there too for you. So as always, I hope you found this talk helpful, useful, and interesting to you as you learn to navigate the energy cycles of your own life. All right, so until the next one, have a good eclipse season. Take care. Namaste.